Hello and welcome to We Are Already Free. If you are someone who has ever felt trapped and overwhelmed by the endless distractions of our modern disconnected life and you're dodging life's raw edges, things like pain, loss, or discomfort, only to discover that your true voice, your joy, your meaning have been lost in the process, then this episode is for you, because in a society that is doing everything it can to unfortunately destroy nature, presence, and real connections, burying our pain only deepens the disconnect, robbing us of purpose, of the power to take action, our focused action. Today, we have the great blessing of being joined by Couture, who is going to support us in embracing the challenges to live with more sovereignty, authenticity, and radiance in the everyday. Couture is a homesteader, mother, wife, and author of a beautiful new book called Radiance of the Ordinary. And she has herself walked many of the paths of the dark nights of the soul, through loss, through the fear of death, through presencing herself in her life on her slowdown farmstead. And she's here to share truths and her authentic experiences with us all via her Substack to thousands of us around the world, and now also through her book, which is awesome. So welcome back to We Are Already Free, lovely people, where we are remembering that there is always a choice. Through real and raw chats with our fellow rooted seekers, we are inspired to remember that we have a choice. Thank you for being here. When you hear the words, we are already free, what comes up for you?
Acceptance.
Change.
A shift in awareness.
Human beings are so powerful.
There's so much more.
Everything is love behind it.
Breaking the chains of your own mind.
That which remains.
Nature.
Getting out of the matrix.
We're sitting on the treasure and it's already unlocked.
We are already free.
You're free.
You are a walking map.
Have always been free.
You are always free.
Already free.
We are already free.
Before we continue with this episode with Couture, I wanted to acknowledge a few things. This is episode 100 of this podcast. I'm so grateful that you have joined me for this journey, whether you've just joined recently or whether you've been here since episode 1, which, as you'll hear, was also with Tara. So it feels like a good closing route. And the reason it's a closure for me is that I am sunsetting this podcast as a weekly podcast. I'm realizing that's become more of a chore than a pleasure in my life. I started this podcast because I love inspiring conversations. I love meeting and connecting with people who are themselves remembering that we are already free. And I absolutely adore sharing those chats with you in the hope that, and in the belief that it serves us all. At the same time, the push and the intensity and the hustle and the grind of it has lost its joy for me. What I've learned from sharing this podcast is that it is so critical to prioritize deep, authentic connection in our lives and to remember that we are truly worthy of being here, that we are all worthy simply because we exist. And that's why I'm redirecting towards my Patreon, which gets us off the social media platforms that you can follow for free, become part of the Forest family, or you can become one of the Guardians, a play on my surname, and you can help us to make music for our hearts, share stories for our souls, and plant trees for our earth in service to our remembrance of our innate freedom. So if you are someone who is seeking more connection, more slowing down, more of the remembrance of your worthiness, then please do come to nathan.live/Patreon and follow for free or become one of the Guardians. But for now, I wish you a beautiful, profound, and transformational experience listening to this chat with Couture. Hello, Tara. Welcome back to We Are Already Free.
Hello, beautiful Nathan. I'm so happy to be here with you.
I'm so excited that we get to do this again. You were my number one, my very first guest on this podcast. And still, when people say to me, oh, I want to give your podcast a listen, which episodes should I go for? And I'm like, just go for number one. That is a very good starting point. So thank you so much for being here.
I'm honored. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Oh, so much joy. And it's funny because over the years, we've had these moments where I've heard you mentioning like, oh, book, I'm writing a book. I want to write a book. And here you are, you have a book. And that's super exciting. And we're going to get to that in a little while. I have this tendency to dive like all the way in with the first question. So I'm wondering if I could do I do that now? But there's something about the way that you share that really holds and makes space for the intensity, like the intensity of life, the bigness of grief and of loss and of not knowing what to do or which way to turn, but still showing up for it. And at least for myself, I'm just seeing in this time, I feel overwhelmed at times. Like a lot of the time, there's so much going on. There's so much going wrong. That is my judgment. And what is still worth doing? How do I know what to show up for? And you said something, I think you even shared it on Instagram today, but about like something about kindness or gentleness or being gentle in those moments. And I guess, so yeah, my first question is really around like, what are you going through right now in your own world? What are the things that are rising up to meet you in that way, that challenges, and how are you meeting that? Whatever you want to speak to in that. I can ask another question, but that's what's coming up.
Yeah, I think what I said was grace. I think that's been a real two big themes of my life over the last few years. It's been grace and faith. And maybe I use those words a little bit differently, not really necessarily with a religious context, although certainly if that's how people find grace and faith, and that's, you know, a way to express that. But I think grace, because the world is bananas. And if you're at all attuned to reality, we all know that, we feel it, we're living through it and trying to still have this sanctified space for our life. And so it's such a challenge to actually be aware and be open and be awake to the shenanigans of the people that are in power and the way they're trying to roll this world in such an incongruous way to how the world, to the gift that we've been given of life in this world. And I think that's a painful thing, because we've been given such abundance and beauty in this life and in this world. And to see people that actually have the power to shift things, trying to morph it into this like tightly controlled, materialistic world where we lose myth and spirit and disregard beauty entirely, it's heartbreaking. To pretend it's not is to pretend. And I have no tolerance for that, because to pretend is to pull yourself away from the authenticity of your life. So that's why I always think it's important to be sad when you feel sad, and to notice these things and to have our hearts broken. But you can't stay in that place either. You can hold multiple emotions and multiple energies and focuses at once. And I guess that's what I always try and speak to. So right now, you were asking like what's going on like with us right now. We've had like a few months of really terrible heartbreaks where people that are close to us have died by suicide. I'm thinking of a young mother who left a 9-month-old baby behind because her mind was so ravaged by pharmaceutical drugs. So these things I carry profoundly and heavily in my heart. I think about it all the time, and I have to find a way to navigate through carrying that and being there for other people in a very open and vulnerable way, knowing what that brings many of that stuff out for me as well, having lost a daughter who died by suicide, of course. And so I have to be willing to go into that and to be there with someone else, but still function in a way that honors my sacred life and honors the gift of my sacred life. And so I never feel like I move out of that space. I'm continuously sort of just living with all of that at once. So there's been quite a bit of death in our life lately, really some big tragedies. And on the farm, we're in a drought right now. And so there's an energetic heaviness, sort of thirst that comes with that. And yet I was in the forest this morning with my pups, and I could just sit there by the water for a time and just completely be in that moment. And I just felt such intense gratitude for the gift of this life, even when there is all that pain. And so that's just normal, everyday type of stuff, because, you know, I want to feel the good stuff. So I got to feel that stuff too, right? I have to be here for all of it. So.
Yeah, that's what has always spoken so deeply to me in the way you share. And there's a few paths I want to explore today, and I'm hoping that they flow. One is creativity, and really to honor this book that you've brought through and your writing in general, and even just to hear you speak now, I hear such a clarity of creation, the way that and that's a skill that you've developed. The other path is around specifically homesteading and what is worth really spending our lives on in this time, and it's just some reflections on being more connected to our nature, to nature, and to that integrated journey of life, death, rebirth, etc., being regenerative within that. And then the final piece, and maybe I'll start here, the sense of overwhelm. When I watch your sharings, when I read your sharings, when I interact with you, there's a part of me that feels inadequate. And this has zero to do with you and what you're doing, and everything to do with me and misalignment with my values. And so it's been this thing that I've been sitting with as this conversation's been coming up. And this is a bigger topic in my life around worthiness and worth, because I feel a deep connection to nature and to regeneration and to a regenerative life. And yet the way that I spend and have spent most of my time has been sitting in front of a computer screen for much of my life. And yes, that's not all of my story. I have written songs I'm incredibly proud of that I believe are medicine for all of us. And I also am aware that there is an incongruency, and that word that you use is one of my favorite words, about congruence. And so this is what I'd love to hear from you in this moment. What a little piece of your own journey of coming into more congruence in your life, so that over time, it's to give myself, and I'm sure many listening, inspiration to know that wherever you are right now listening, wherever I am right now, that we can move in the direction of our values and move in the direction of regeneration. And so I guess that's the question is what was your journey like when you were not congruent, when there was a sense of you're living one way, but you feel another, your values are misaligned with your actions? And could you speak to that?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think that most of my adult life was like that, to be honest. My husband, I was in the military when I was very young, and my husband was in the military for 25 years. So we moved every couple of years. So I was never grounded or rooted to any place. And I was raising young kids, and, money was tight, and we were always hustling, and life is busy. And, I often felt really alone and isolated, just, because we moved so much. Sometimes it would be hard to make friends, and the friends you would make maybe wouldn't be one of the friends you'd want to keep long term. And so I felt like there was a lot of show or a lot of superficiality in my life, and that felt very incongruent to me. I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. I didn't like being in the city, but I had this beautiful family and they needed me. And so as a woman and as a mother, I felt like a duty, and one that I embraced, to have my children feel safe, to be well nourished, to spend time in nature as best as I could. But it honestly wasn't until I ended up, because we used to get food from farmers, and I went to a farmer who ended up being my mentor a couple years later. But when I went there, and I just knew instantly what that sort of hole was for me. And so I started working towards that, and I started recognizing that incongruence I felt, there was a reason for it, because I had been able to find that place where I felt whole. And where I felt like aligned and harmonious, and that place was on the land. And so I was able to accept that the reason I felt that was it was almost like a gift, because it was a driver for me to start moving in that direction. And that direction was very, very slow for me. I mean, we're talking over 10 years of just volunteering on a farm for like half of a day, and reading in a library, and it was very slow, and saving up money to buy our first farm. Like but there was a peace in just knowing that I had a direction that I was moving into. And so I mean, I don't want to make it sound like I've arrived at some place, because I still feel incongruence all the time. And I use that feeling as just a message from a helpful little spirit somewhere around there, letting me know that I'm offline, and I'm not moving in a place that feeds my soul. And so I just use that to sort of sit with myself and try and figure that out. But I want to say, Nathan, I mean, it's very honest of you, and I really, really respect that, because the fact that you even know that incongruence of where you feel, like being in nature and all these things, but you're spending a lot of time in front of your computer. It's also, I think, a malady of our era. I think these computers are really, they can be really productive and helpful. And look, I'm talking to you like across the world right now. It's beautiful. But there's also, even still, I'm constantly trying to find a way back and out of this whole digital realm, because I just don't think anyone can feel really good about being here, because it's against our nature in so many ways.
Thank you for speaking to that. And that's actually the next thing I wanted to explore with you, because I feel you've mentioned in places around distraction, and how there was a time where you distracted yourself from, you were kind of afraid of death and therefore trapped yourself in distractions. And I'm sorry if I don't have the exact quote there, but does that sound familiar? And I'm curious to know, because I think right now, just to give context for that, we are in the age of distraction. If there ever was a title for where we are right now as a society, and what we are being actually encouraged to do, is to distract ourselves with the binge watch and the doom scroll and the just buy another thing. It's fine. You don't have to feel that feeling. And so were you in that space yourself at some point around distraction, and just a little of that journey for you?
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I think distraction comes in a plethora of ways. It's everywhere. And it can be things that look quite normal to us as well. I think that, even just as an example, the health space online is a distraction.
Oh,
People
wow.
are like obsessed with bringing ourselves to some pinnacle utopia of health and this biohacking. And I mean, it can look like positive things, I mean, there's the obvious ones of drinking or screens, like you said, doom scrolling, all these sorts of things. But there's other ways to distract yourself too. And busyness, how many people do I know my age that when I say, how are you doing? And they say, oh, I'm so busy. And it's almost a marker of relevance. Like I'm busy, so I've got a life going on here. And so like just this frenetic energy of just looking at anything other than what hurts us. And I think that because we have such a pain adverse society, both physical pain and emotional, mental, everything, we think pain is so bad that there's nothing in there for us. And so whatever it takes, because the second you're just still, the second you allow yourself boredom, like how many people are bored anymore? When I was a kid, if I would go to my mom and be like, oh, I'm bored, she'd be like, well, that's your problem, girl. Go find something to do. But we just to allow boredom, like sit there and allow your thoughts to come. If that makes people uncomfortable, it is just so telling of what they actually need. They have to go into that discomfort and find out what's sitting there waiting for them, because there's gifts in that. That's how we connect with our spirits. That's how we connect with the Great Spirit. That's how we are able to evolve our lives. All this other stuff is not meant to evolve us. It's meant to stagnate us. It's meant to keep us docile and placid and filled up. And at the end of the day, people are just exhausted and they haven't even done anything with their days. They've just filled their brains with all this constant information, and it's not the way that we're designed to live. So I think very strongly that distractions are, it's just it's the same as addictions. We're distracted, we're addicted, we're distracted and addicted, and we're never just still and quiet. And I think it's probably the biggest problem of our time right now for the, we have mental illness is like so high, and yet people are just be able to sit with yourself in quiet is almost not only challenging, but I mean, I do know people that they just don't even want to do it. They'll just get up and do things so they don't ever have to be in that position. And that's really sad. It's really sad. That's not what we were designed to be like.
Yeah, you're speaking to actually some of my own experience. I have generally struggled with stillness, and I think there's multiple reasons for that. And I do think it is required, and more I'm realizing, like, until I'm ready to really face that intensity of that stillness. And actually, for me, one of my great medicines has ended up being plant medicine, so psychedelic medicine. And I know that's not for everyone, and I don't think I'm an evangelist of it, although I am very enthusiastic about it because of what it's done in my life. But that's generally the first thing I confront on a medicine journey, is when I start to feel something come over me. And basically what it is there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere else. There's no when else. There's nowhere else. It's just me in my body, in my mind, having this experience. Here you go. Here's all the aches. Here's all the pains. Here's all the worries. Here's all the stories. Here's all the stuff that has not had an opportunity to be heard and to be felt. And now we're going to do it. And it's like, that's a very confronting thing certainly for me, and I know for a lot of others. And yet when I do give myself the gift of that, there is such a reward through that. There's such a sense of, okay, so here's all of me, and I'm going to be okay with all of me. I'm going to forgive all of me. I'm going to love all of me. And there's like energy that gets released in that. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've not done that, but I think that's and shouldn't we?
Right.
Shouldn't we just be able to be there with ourselves wholly and accept ourselves in that way? Whatever comes. It's not all pretty. No. There's a lot of muck in there. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that as you said, a lot of muck in there. You reminded me of the morning pages. I'm not sure if that's a practice that you do or have done, but the Artist's Way, Julia Cameron. So her recommendation is that people write 3 pages of handwritten stream of consciousness every morning. And not with the intention that, oh, this is my writing I'm going to share with the world. It's like, as she said, it's basically you just clearing the muck. Not always muck. Sometimes it's beautiful what comes through, but it's not about that. It's just write. And if you don't know what to write, she said, to the point of being, I don't know what to write, la, 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 this is very strange, nothing's happening. Right. And you just keep going and keep going. And basically she's like, what you're doing is you're clearing the muck out of the pond, and you're just filtering it all out so that you can be clear for your life. And when you said that, it immediately made me think of that, which immediately then makes me think of your creative practice and your writing. And just share a little with us about this process. What has it been like for you? What comes up for you when you think about the fact that you've written a book?
Well, it ties into what we were just talking about, because for me, for writing, whether it was like a book or like Substack or whatever, there's nothing in here that I can draw from other than memories and experiences, but like inspiration and like messages comes to me in silence, always comes to me in silence. And so I guess that's why I feel so committed to finding those spaces for me in a day. I feel like I am able in that silence to just drop out of myself and open myself up to messages or ways of seeing things that are outside of myself. Like it's just not the way that I would necessarily see something, and that instantly is recognized. I instantly recognize that as a gift that has come to me, and I think that allows me to be courageous in what I write about, because I feel so small and insignificant in that process. I'm just a transcriber, I feel like, and worrying about how someone would judge me or receive what I'm saying about myself, or is this too intimate and I want to protect it because it feels too painful to share. I still get those feelings, but I also really just feel like it's beyond me. I'm just a piece in this huge stream of, consciousness and humanity and spirit and at this time in our lives. And if there's like one little pebble that I can throw into this vast sea of like creation and communication and us sharing with each other and being able to put something out there that will resonate in ways I will never know and I don't need to know. I just know that if I follow the pokes that I get, that I've done my part and that's it. I don't need people to say good job. I don't need to get likes or rewards. I did my part and I feel like that is my obligation, having been given this life, is to honor it with whatever talents or beautiful things I can share in my unique way with other people. And so that's just, it makes it, I think we're too trapped in our own brains sometimes with our egos, and that can really limit you in what you're willing to put out or what you're willing to say, because the result of that is dependent on how it's received. And I don't give like a flying fig about how I'm received. I have to be willing to offend as equally as I'm willing to be, commended. And that's true. That's what you get. But it's not, I've done my part. And so that's what I ask of myself.
Mm. You're reminding me a lot of the book, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, which I'm currently reading I'm kind of just reading it nonstop at the moment. It's not a very long book, but he talks about...
The War of Art?
Yeah, The War of Art. The War of Art. Yeah, so the other way around.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's a short book, and it's he basically says that anything that is worth doing, anything that is a calling, and whether it's being a mom, being a parent, or being a writer, or creating a business, but if it's really aligned with your calling that's going to make the world a better place, he said immediately that activates the enemy, and the enemy is resistance. And it's interesting because you've spoken to this throughout our conversation so far, where you talk about incongruency, and incongruency, that feeling of discomfort, is actually the compass. It's like, I know that something's out of sync here. And and then you just said, I get the pokes. And if I don't listen to the pokes, so it's like these little invitations from grace, from the Great Spirit, like whatever it is that these signposts, and this author, Stephen, talks about it very clearly. He's like and he has a quote. He's actually quoting someone else in the book, but I wanted to ask you about this. The quote is something like, I only write when inspiration strikes. Fortunately, it strikes at 9 a.m. sharp every morning. And so I would love to hear, because obviously that it's this thing of like, if we wait for inspiration, we'll be waiting forever. It's about actually sitting down and doing the thing. And I feel like you spoke about this in our last episode, but it's basically just share a little bit around your own, what is your commitment to your creativity, and how do you give it the honoring that it requires of you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I completely agree with what you just said. And that, for me, there's an inspiration that will come, and I jot things down with a paper and a pencil, an actual pencil. There's something about the sound of the lead on the paper that I like. I like the old school. And so I'll just jot that down, and, a theme more than anything else. And then, but I have to have, for me, I think I err more on the side of just willy-nilly, artist sort of. I like just doing things on the spur of the moment. But I find scheduling is really important for me, and it's how my mind best fits into a task. And so I actually years ago, read the book Deep Work. Did you ever read that one?
I haven't read it, but I've heard good things.
Okay. It's a very good book for anyone. And it's just about scheduling your days without having this sort of tyrannical approach to yourself. And I combine that with bullet journaling. And so I can have blocks in my day where I know this time is dedicated to this. So I might have an hour on some days. I might have 2 hours on some days. This is dedicated to writing on this day. And then, I have a block of time to be out doing my gardening or whatever it is. So I have that structure, and I only do that structure until supper time. And then after supper time we'll play games or we'll hang out or whatever. But I have to, that's important for me to do that because it allows me to progress. So as an example, when I was writing my book, I couldn't figure out how to fit that in with all my other tasks. And I needed a dedicated 4 or 5 hours. And so I woke up at 3 o'clock every morning and I made myself some coffee and breakfast and I wrote by candlelight. But it was a very sacred time because it was winter for most of it. I wrote some of it in the spring, but it was mostly winter and the house was quiet and I would start a fire and there was a whole ritual that was built into it. And I knew I had 4 or 5 hours to write and there was nothing else I had to do in that time. And so that allowed me to move through a really condensed period of time to get a lot of work done. And so for me, it's both like the instinct of what to write that comes to me in the silence and being outside, but then there's also the structure to implement and be able to get and do that sort of thing. You know, when I write for Substack regularly, I mean, I have to have those chunks of time dedicated or I won't get it done. That's just the way it works for me.
Wow, I'm just going to reflect what you've spoken to here because for me, this is such a gorgeously simple way to invite creativity in. It's the silence, it's the spaciousness, it's the meandering walk in the woods or on the beach or in the mountain or whatever that thing is. So allowing, and then it's that capturing those ideas, like those little snippets of whatever it is with the scratch of the pencil on the paper being like, oh, that's interesting, that theme. And then it's the structure of like, okay, on this day I have this time and so I'm going to sit down and write. And just that's it. That's what I've just heard you say. And it's so simple and so beautiful. And actually just while I'm remembering, if anyone is watching this live, this is a live stream. I know there's a few people on live. Please do ask any questions you have in the comments and we'll get to those a little later on. And thank you for being here. So thank you. That is a beautiful, I think if anyone takes anything from this, anyone who wants to be creative there's a question I wanted to ask you, although I know kind of an answer that I know you believe in a certain direction and I'd love to just hear it in your words. But I wrestle at times with this question of like, why the fuck does this matter? Like being a creative, who am I to sit here typing out these things or writing these songs or like, there's serious stuff going on in the world, you know, I need to go out and fix something and so I'm curious if that's something that you've dealt with it or if that comes up and what your perspective is on creativity, on being a creator in these times.
Yeah, absolutely. And all the time. But I think the answer is that, well, you can't fix it, Nathan. You can't. Sorry. But you can create something that has a profound effect on human beings in ways you will never be able to measure. And you are, by following that congruence of your life, honoring the gift that you've been given of being here in this time. You're a new papa. You get to create these things. And I don't believe in material measures of things. I don't think you can say, what they're doing is infinitely more powerful than what we're doing. They're going to ruin it all. And, what does it matter that I play guitar and I sing a song? It matters just as much as what they're doing. It matters more than what they're doing, because I think that these things, these immeasurable things, have a profound impact. And that's exactly why they want to keep us busy and distracted from our talents and the things that we can create and we can offer. And because we are so infinitely powerful. I mean, that is really, truly powerful. I don't say that in some, artists, we've got the power kind of way. It is absolutely true, because you were given those gifts by our creator, and you were given those gifts in this time by our creator. We were not given gifts to come here and destroy, or to get more money, or to control other people. That's not a gift. That's moving in incongruence, and it can't last forever. I don't believe that. And so I mentioned earlier faith. That's what faith is to me. Faith is believing that we have these things and they're important to work towards and to offer, because some being, I say God, whatever anyone wants, God saw in me something so important that he gave me life in this time. Like, if God saw that, like, who am I to diminish what I have to offer when it's all I have to offer? It's all I have to offer, but to minimize that is to minimize the very gift of our being. So no, I'm not going to do that, because I have profound faith in just the fact that I'm here, that God saw in me that I needed to be here right now.
Oh, thank you for that. I resonate deeply, and actually it reminded me, I'm just going to pick something up off the floor here.
Okay.
I was just, I've got a little altar in my room just for my prayer, and I was just saying some prayer before our call, and I opened up my favorite book, which is, I don't know if you know, Hafiz. The subject tonight is love.
Hafiz, yeah.
So this book is what basically, there's a very long story behind it, which I won't go into, but if anyone wants it, please comment, and I will actually, I should write this story. Actually, I wrote it on my Substack. It's on my Substack. That's great. Okay. But this book and these poems was the first time I heard someone else talk about God the way I felt God, but I had kind of disowned God in a way because of how I'd heard that name used in the world and in society, and what I'd seen done in that name. And I was like, that doesn't resonate with me at all. And then I read Hafiz, and I was like, oh, there it is. This is it. This is the one. And so there's two poems here. I opened on this page randomly, just being like, is there a message here for us today? And I'll read both of them because they're quite short, and they're two of my favorites. This one is called "Will Beat You Up." Jealousy and most all of your sufferings are from believing you know better than God. Of course, such a special brand of arrogance as that always proves disastrous and will rip the seams in your caravan tent, then cordially invite in many species of mean, biting flies and strange thoughts that will beat you up.
Isn't that it?
Isn't that it? And it's because, like, as I read it, when I was like, this, I feel so resonant with what I feel we were going to be discussing. But this thing of the believing we know better than God, and what you just spoke to was exactly that. And then the other poem, which is one of my top 3 poems of his, and I love them all, but this poem has spoken to me for many years. I Follow Barefoot, it's called. I long for you so much. I follow barefoot your frozen tracks that are high in the mountains that I know are years old. I long for you so much. I have even begun to travel where I have never been before. Hafiz, there is no one in this world who is not looking for God. Everyone is trudging along with as much dignity, courage, and style as they possibly can. I love that one so much.
It's beautiful.
It just reminds me that, that there is something, that feeling of not having found yet, but that the search is worth it. Like that there's those times where I don't feel like I found the thing I'm looking for. And those are like, can be really hard times. And yet there's a reason that I'm searching. And that itself is that calling forward. It's the congruency again, actually.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a whole chapter in my book dedicated to God. I mean, the chapter is God. And it sort of walks through, I grew up Catholic. And so God to me was sort of this stern Santa Claus in the sky. I never felt like I had a real relationship with God. I didn't really understand. I felt like I had to be good. On Fridays, we would go to mass with our class, but first we'd have to go confess to the priest, and so there was this real like, what have I done bad this week that I have to go tell? Do I really have to tell everything? But and then I sort of pulled away from the church when I was in high school, and I've tried all sorts of different iterations since then, and I think there's a lot of beauty to well, I think the Catholic Mass is beautiful, and Orthodox is beautiful. I mean, I have like respect for that, but I really just for myself, I had this real sort of itch when I use the word God. And so I would say like trying to be inclusive and trying not, because what does God mean? Like if some people, it means something. So, they just, it's uncomfortable, or they right away, they're try and sniff out, wait a minute, are you like religious? Are you an evangelical, or are you not religious? Are you not an evangelical? So it's really choppy waters to get into that. But a few years ago, I just really came to understand. I just feel like I have a very deep and intimate relationship with God, and God is God, and I don't need to worry about how other people perceive that. To me, God is our creator, the creator of all this beauty, and I find God all around me every day, and in the most, what we would call insignificant things, but the brilliance of God's creation is just astounding. If you'll just sit there, even with a leaf for 20 minutes, really to just sit there with a leaf. And as I'm talking to you, 2 little goldfinches just flew by. So one for me, one for you, Nathan. But like to see, just to be able to allow that to penetrate into ourselves, is to look at something or to listen to something or to see something and allow like our defenses to go away and allow that beauty to just saturate into ourselves, to me is union with God, because God is beauty and love. And to allow that to come in with no distractions, with nothing else going on, but just the rawness, it can be just as difficult to open up to as pain can be, because we are taught to dull and buffer ourselves from these things, because it can feel like too much sometimes. But it's a work worth investing in, because it's the profound meaning in our lives. Yeah.
So. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. And it leads me into, it's like a part of me, I just kind of want to sit with this, like what you just shared. And yet here we are having a conversation on the internet, so we better keep it moving. No, just a brief story without going into detail, because it's someone else's story. But someone recently said they had an experience in a sort of a transcendental experience where they, a Gnostic experience of that, and they'd been sitting in some judgment in themselves and had this basically just dumped, like the universe, God, I guess, dumped love onto them in such a big way. And the thing was basically, how you want to know how much love there is? Because if I give you all the love there is, you will die. It is that much love. And it was like, okay, I get it. Like, I'm good in this body for a while. And I thought that was amazing.
Yes.
That's what you just reminded me of.
That's so true. We cannot hold that kind of love. And therein is a great message of what's to come when we leave this realm and go on to another, is the capacity to not only receive it, but to be it and be in the flow of that kind of profound love. I mean, wow, what a beautiful thing. A hopeful thing.
Yes. Heck yes to hope. And I want to circle while I'm remembering this. You said, and because it relates to your book, around just go like looking at a leaf and going into that. And actually, I know I do talk about plant medicines a fair amount, but it's because it really has been such a big thing in my life. And I had an experience where my first ever sort of what they called a hero's dose or macro dose of mushrooms, of sacred mushrooms. And I had what they call an ego death in this process. And I was really struggling with depression at the time. Really, it was at the hardest time for me, where a lot of my friends and family who aren't pro medication were saying like, hey, maybe you should go on antidepressants. This is we're worried for you. And I just was like, I had read enough about them to go, that's not going to do me any good. That's not a way forward for me personally. Anyway, so I ended up in this journey, and I had this huge experience of that love. I really, the Nathan self, this little self, I went beyond that, and I felt this like, oh my gosh, everything is loved. Everything is love. There is this love that is permeating everything. And then I woke up the next day and I was still depressed, and I still didn't know what to do with my life. And I was like, okay, well now what do I do? That's a problem. And thankfully, my guitar was at hand, and I hadn't played in months at that time. And I picked up my guitar and I went and I sat under a tree and I picked up a leaf and I looked at that leaf. And as I looked at the leaf, I just suddenly realized that I could zoom into that leaf to infinity, or really as close as makes no difference to me. Like it is just, there's no end to the depths of that leaf. And then I suddenly realized, oh, I could do the same thing going out. And yet here I am. And that it was just like I suddenly felt the sense that of place, belonging in place, of belonging. Like I'm here. And that in itself, that leaf gave me that. And I actually wrote a song in that moment called In Every Leaf, which is exactly about that. So yes, leaves have that, can give you access to that too.
Everything can. Yeah, it's beautiful.
And that's why I'm bringing that up now, because your book, Radiance of the Ordinary. Yes. I would love to just hear a bit more from you around, because I acknowledge my bias here. I think it's such a beautiful name. The word radiance itself is a word I don't hear used very often, and it is such a beautiful word. It really describes something very specifically, like powerful, and then radiance of the ordinary. And so the way you've combined those as a lyricist and a lover of words just really tickles me. So please share a little bit about that. What is that for you?
Well, I'll just speak quickly to the title, because there's a bit of a story behind that title. But years ago, I'm a big, I love used bookstores. And so if I find an old bookstore, it's like stuff falling over in piles, the better. You know, I like them dusty and dirty. And anyway, many years ago, about 20 years ago, I was in a used bookstore and I pulled this book out from underneath a pile, and it said Radiance of the Ordinary. And I thought, that is the most perfect way to encapsulate how to live life well, like to be able to radiate or find radiance in just the most ordinary things, just what we're talking about, a leaf. And it was a book about rural Japan. There was nothing in it that really, it was just some photographs, but I bought it because the title was so beautiful. And I love books. I collect books. I have a home library. And so I had it on my shelf, and I would look at the title every now and then, just think, well, that was such a beautiful, beautiful way. And it would be a reminder to me. And it became sort of this credo in my life. And when we were looking for our farm, we came down to go see the farm. And there was a sign in the middle of the country road that said Radiance of the Ordinary with an arrow. And I was like, what? Back up. And my husband, Troy, said, why back up? We're turning here. We were going to where the sign said Radiance of the Ordinary. And I'm like, what? Wait, what? Like, what dimension am I in here? Anyways, our farm is literally about a half a kilometer from this old cheese shop. There used to be cheese factories all over the rural areas that are all defunct now. But this artist that made brooms called his little shop Radiance of the Ordinary. So anyways, we bought the farm, and that name has stuck with me profoundly. And I've always known that. So of course that old Japanese book was out of print, so it was fine to use it. But anyway, so that's where the name came from. And you're going to have to remind me about the rest of the question, Nathan, because I went off on that.
No, that was, thank you.
What it's about.
Yeah.
And it's just about what we're talking about right now. It's about the dichotomies of life and living in them and accepting them, to stop judging things as good or bad, to understand that there's profound gifts, maybe even more so in things that we in a moment might view as bad. Everything in my life that has stuck with me and brought me great meaning and profound gifts has been the hard things. The good things are good because they let you exhale and they let things be light and they give you some sweet memories to carry with you. But the real learning and evolving takes place through the hardship. And so I just wanted to write a book about that, about life and death and these different things that when we're distracting ourselves, we're trying to stay far away from, because it seems out of our capacity to handle them, to receive what they have to give us. And so we are fearful of them, and in that fear and in distracting ourselves and staying away from them, we diminish our capacity for all of life. And so that's what I wanted to speak to, having just come to that, not being born that way at all, but having come to that through those profoundly heartbreaking and agonizing moments of my life, and the things, like I said, that poke me when I'm out walking, being like, you know, you need to write about this. So that's sort of an encapsulation of what I wanted to put into a book.
Yeah, thank you. That story you just shared is one of my favorite things about life, is like those moments in my life when that has happened. It's such a shocking, like in a positive way, it's such a jarring, like, oh my gosh, magic is real, because there's no way that wasn't orchestrated. Like it's just too precise. It's
so true. It's like, it's so obvious. How could you not see this?
Oh, man.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing.
I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, that's beautiful. I can't believe, like, it's already, we're at like 50 minutes. It's wild. So we do have a question that's coming. Like, it's flowed. And I've got a few more things I want to cover. So the last kind of topic I want to explore just a little bit is this thing around farming, homesteading. And just to offer, because in my mind, as the Wendell Berry quote that I saw on a local regenerative farmer's wall, where he put it in huge letters across, like as you walk into the shop, it says, "We are all farmers by proxy." And I'd never heard that quote before. And it really hit me hard. I was like, yes, we are all farmers by proxy. Every single human on earth, by their interrelation, by their connection to their food, is connected to some kind of a farm that is producing some kind of a food in some kind of a way. And that is a responsibility. Yes. And so the furthest extent of becoming truly responsible, and I would say even not necessarily congruent for everyone, but that's kind of the question I want to ask. But the furthest extent is to be a homesteader, is what you guys are up to, or be a homesteader, or be in a community of people who are raising food together. Like that is you're no longer a farmer by proxy, you are the farmer. And that's kind of really stepping into that deep role. And the question I have, because as I said, I spend a lot of I live in a what do you call it? Like a suburban area, and I don't have a farm right now. I mean, actually, we have access to a farm. Carly's father, where my wife has a guest house, has a farm, and we're actually discussing movements in that direction, like how we can be more responsible for that. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But for many people listening, they might be like, well, I'm in the city and here's where I am. I'm an urban person right now, and that's where my life is. It's where my work is, my family, my people. Do you know, and I'm okay with you having a strong opinion here as always, but like, do you believe that everyone should be moving out of the cities and onto land if they can, and at least moving in that direction? Or do you believe someone can be urban and still be congruent?
No, I don't think everyone should move out to the land. Absolutely not. I definitely think you can be urban and congruent too, because I did it for many years. I mean, when Troy was in the military. And I think it's an investment, but like you said, it's a responsibility. And I think that we need to be responsible. I used to get raw milk shares as an example. And yes, I'd have to drive once a week. It was 2 hours each way to go pick up my milk. And I made the time to go 2 hours each way to go pick up our milk, and I couldn't afford it. So I brought in more milk than I needed to and back into the city with me, and people bought it off me, and I covered enough of my gas and our milk to pay for it. Like, there's a lot of creative ways. We have to get out of this thinking of grocery stores, though, to make these creative ways, to make room for that. That's the thing. We have to understand it's not convenient because we're not living how we're supposed to be living. But the grocery store is not convenient either, in different ways. It's just an illusion of convenience. And so, we had a community garden that we grew our vegetables in the summertime. The convenience for us was that every fall in October and November, we go pick up a whole cow from a farmer. We go pick up 30 or 40 chickens or whatever it was. We go pick up the pig that was butchered. And I didn't have to go to the grocery store for meat for a year. So there's like, and Nathan, beyond that, there's tons of benefits beyond that, including, yes, what you're supporting and what you're putting your energy into growing, but it's also the relationships that you build with people, and that you are, supporting the good work that somebody else is doing, which is that person, that farmer, that may be his gift and his calling. What we were just talking about earlier is that he can work the land and work the animals, and that he's putting his passions into that, and the resonance that that has in the food and that we're able to benefit from is equally important. And so, yes, those big maniacs are going to keep up with their feedlots for as long as there's people buying meat from tortured animals. They'll keep doing it. But to just throw up our hands and say, well, that's what the grocery store offers, I've just never had patience for that, because we can all, if it's a priority, we'll make it happen to some degree. And where the systems don't exist or money doesn't exist in order to do that, the people that can afford to do it, the people that will put in that commitment, are creating possibilities for people that have no possibilities right now because of economics or because they're landlocked or whatever. The more that we can support this type of farming and growing, the more these things become accessible to everyone. Like, I can go to a grocery store now and get an organic apple. 30 years ago, when, well, our firstborn is 32 now, but when she was 30 years ago, if I went to a grocery store, there was no organic apples. There was no organic anything. So a lot has changed. And I think that the more that we reject what's on offer and put our energies into creating what we want to see, the better it is. And we definitely don't need everybody running to the land to do that. We need to support the people doing it well, for sure. Yeah.
I think the day that I know that things have really shifted around, like the organic stuff, is when apples are just called apples and then there are poisoned apples. I think that would that one just drives me mad. The fact that language has been stolen, that there's actually been a thieving of what is natural, so that for us to now to interact with something that is in fact good for the earth and ourselves, we have to say, I want an organic apple. What? That's a scam.
I know.
Oh,
totally.
And yes, I agree with everything you said. But that just, it infuriates me. It's because language is so important as people who love words. Like I heard it said by someone that's why we call it spelling, because it's magic. You create magic with words. You create the world with words. And the fact that that's happening, where people go, alternative medicine. I'm like, what do you mean alternative? Alternative to what? And we know to what. Exactly. But that's very sneaky. Oh, yeah. Conspiracy theorists. There's another one that annoys me. It's like, you mean someone who has a theory that there might be a conspiracy, which there definitely have been many. Like, it's a pretty solid theory.
The whole world's a conspiracy, don't you know?
Jesus. Anyway, okay. Well, thank you for that. That's actually really reassuring and lovely, and I think hopeful for many who maybe don't want to move in that direction or aren't in that direction. For myself as well, there are times when I go, am I going to be a homesteader? Like, I like music, I like writing, I like playing, I like hanging out and doing breath work. And like, I don't know if gardening is or growing food is really the thing, but it might be. So I'm open to it. But I enjoy that feeling of there is a place for all of us, and it's about being in our place well. I think that's what I've heard you reflect a number of times throughout this.
Yeah, very well said.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to move into Q&A, well, now basically, and that's it. We're going to move into Q&A.
All right.
So we have someone whose username is Source, which I think is very interesting and cool. And I'm going to throw up, let me see how this works. I haven't done many of these lives yet, so this is kind of a new thing, but I want to see where Source's first question was related to. Source was saying, I would love to deepen my relationship with the Creator. Coming from a religious cult background, I've had a lot to unwire and reprogram. And the question is, what books or people have helped you with your journey into true spirituality?
Oh, that's a really hard one, because I couldn't say there's like specific books. Oh boy, that's a good question. I read a lot. I read from a a really wide variety of books, but I mean, I hesitate because I don't want to give sort of a wishy-washy answer, but honestly, it's everything from like the poetry, the Hafiz, to Wendell Berry, to being out in the forest, to hugging a tree and feeling like the spirit of God in that tree and moving through me. I've in the last few years, I've tried going to some Orthodox churches and different Catholic churches. And so I even read from the Bible sometimes. And I just find again and again, for me, it's just moving in the direction that presents itself to me. Sometimes, I mean, I don't even know tomorrow what the path is going to look like. I just go out and because I feel so connected to God in that very deep and intimate way, because I have time and space for those quiet moments, I have a profound faith, a very deep faith that I never had when I, was going to church. And I have faith in God's plan and in the gifts that I've been given. And so when the path unfolds and I have no idea where I'm going, I go anyway, because I have that faith, and that makes me feel closer to God. So I think after our daughter's death, one of the things that has surprised me the most is how much deeper my faith in God has gotten, because I feel like that was losing a child is so profoundly agonizing. You don't think you're going to live through it. That kind of pain you feel like you can't live through. And I have lived through it, and I have found meaningful things in that pain that I can share with other people. And I know that God saw that in me. He saw something in me I had no way of seeing in myself. And so having carried me through that and moved me through that and still leaving me here breathing to share those things in a way that may bring something to someone else brings a great amount of trust in my relationship with God and why I'm here. So I hope that I don't know if I'm making sense, but that's where I think just being willing to be present and working in your way to find that level of intimacy in your relationship with God. That's how I have been deepening my faith.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Just honoring that. I mean, that a loss of that magnitude can lead to more faith in itself is inspiring faith. Like, it inspires faith just even hearing that. I mean, it's just so... Yeah, I can't imagine. It's beyond imagination.
It is beyond imagination. Yeah. Absolutely, it is. And there's no words to wrap around it. And I agree that my faith has deepened is something beyond myself, and so that makes my faith even grow more. So it's quite a mysterious and wondrous thing, I don't know. I'm just here for it.
Thank you. We have a question coming in from Rebecca. And hello, Rebecca. So lovely to see her. This is one of my dear human who has become a friend, who has been a client and is one of my patrons, and is just a very rad human.
And a little side note, I think if it's the same Rebecca, and I'm sure it is, she actually is connected to one of our dearest and best friends. So they live 2 streets down from each other. So it's crazy.
That is amazing. Yeah. It is a small world sometimes. So she's asking, did you ever forage in Hamilton forests, or let's say urban? I want to make some of your wild cordials.
What was really, it's going to be too late in the season now, but in Westdale, by where all the old brownstone houses are, in the spring, they have the most amazing magnolia trees, and you can make a magnolia cordial, and it's wonderful. And those trees weren't sprayed back then. I'm sure they're still not. I don't see why anyone would spray a magnolia tree, but they're everywhere in the fields around there. So yeah, definitely go hit up the magnolia trees when the people aren't noticing you there in the dark of night.
Amazing. Thank you. So we'll have maybe one or two more. We've got, again, from Source, which it comes in as a few questions. So wherever you want to take this, but basically, what do you plant in your garden? I know you mostly forage. Do you use permaculture style? What style of gardening do you like?
I dabble with permaculture and biodynamics. So I studied biodynamics long before I had a farm. So I use some of the biodynamic preps and principles as well. And what do I grow? We grow, well, this year I've mentioned on my Substack, it was year of the rabbit. The rabbit destroyed most of my garden, not all of it. But anyway, we plant potatoes, we plant corn on the cob, we plant garlic, summer squash, winter squash, all varieties, carrots, peas, different varieties of peas, beans, radishes. I'm a big fan of radishes. Basically everything that we can grow, we plant, and then I'm just preserving and storing it for the year.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thanks to everyone who's joined us live. It's been a pleasure. And if anyone is listening to this as the podcast version or the video version, please do join me further on Patreon or Substack, and you get access to these live recordings when I do them. But mainly, thank you, Tara. I have one more question for you, and I'm going to go back to our guest focus. Here we go. So this is a question I'm excited to ask you, and it is, when you hear the words, "we are already free," what comes up for you?
I'm not sure how I answered that before, but I would just, that we have sovereignty over our experience of this life, no matter what. Even when the maniacs are rolling out their diabolical plans, we have the freedom to decide and choose how we're going to show up and how we are going to receive and what we're going to offer to this sacred life of ours. And it is sacred and it's fleeting and it's going fast. So we should remember that always and honor it in a way that it's deserving of.
Thank you. And finally, I know most people can be directed to slowdownfarmstead.com. Is there any other link or any other resource you'd like them to go to specifically, maybe related to your book, etc., or is that still the best spot?
That's probably the best spot. I'm on Instagram for now under Slowdown Farmstead. And the book, if anyone's interested in ordering it, it can be pre-ordered until September 2nd, and then it's released on September 2nd from any bookstore. And it's just Radiance of the Ordinary.
Oh, thank you again so much, Tara. It's been, time has just flown, and I'm going to move you into the green room, do a little outro, and then we'll have a little bonus chat for patrons and everything. So just from the bottom of my heart, with all of me, thank you. And thank you to my mom for introducing me to your page all those years ago. And just thank you for reminding me of the radiance in the ordinary. Truly, I think that's it's a perfect description of what it is you bring through into the world for me.
Thank you so much, Nathan. It's always wonderful to see you and spend time with you. And I can't wait till I meet you in real life one day and get a big hug from you.
I am so in for that. I just cannot wait. So yeah, thanks again. It's been an absolute pleasure. All the best.
Hey, you too.
All right, beautiful humans. That was Tara Couture of Slowdown Farmstead. And I don't need to tell you, because you've listening to this part, you've been through this beautiful journey with us. Please do go check out Tara's work, slowdownfarmstead.com. Get a hold of her book, Radiance of the Ordinary, and just know that it's okay to be where you are and who you are right now. That's really what I take away from this, that there are those little pokes and invitations and incongruencies and discomforts that are all, in fact, invitations into the magnificence of this moment and of your life and of what you're here to share. So let's cut the distraction and let's get into action and let's align ourselves with the lives we came here to live. Tara has reminded me, as always, of the importance of being here and now. And as I shared in the beginning, this podcast is transforming into a new space and a new place. So I won't be sharing weekly anymore, but I will share episodes when there is a deep resonance with the guests. If you'd like to join a more personal, more connected experience, please do join the Patreon at nathan.live/Patreon. You can follow for free there, or you can become one of the guardians. For every $10 pledged, we plant another tree every month. This is a direct way to support our earth and also to support more songs for our hearts, more stories for our souls, and just being more connected in this remembrance of our worthiness. It's been such a joy to trust in the letting go of what I thought should be and in fact flowing into what is with joy and with grace. So yeah, I hope to see you there. It'd be a real pleasure to get to know you better and more directly through Patreon. That's one of the things I miss through doing a podcast, the more personal, more immediate connection of dialogue and interaction. So I'm praying for more of that and calling it in. So please do join us there. If I could just say one of the greatest takeaways and lessons I've learned from doing 100 episodes of this podcast is that each of us is being invited to find our way to our worthiness, to our remembrance of our innate freedom. And what I also have seen is that social media is a very risky, very dangerous game to play because it is so designed to keep us distracted and separated and polarized that having any kind of long-term positive changes through being on social media are almost certainly overwhelmed by the damage that it causes to our attention and our capacity to be present with ourselves and each other. And that's why I really want to encourage you to join me on Patreon to explore a different way, to experience the internet as a connective force where we come together, we inspire, we remember who we are, we remember our worthiness, and then we can take more consistent and aligned action out there in the world. I hope to see you there. Thank you so much for being on this We Are Already Free journey with me. It is not ending, it is transforming. And thank you so much for Couture for joining us today. All the best. I wish you well. Please remember, we are already free.